the speakers of this session. His Lordship, Mr. Kriangsak Kitticheseri, who is a judge of the International Tribunal for the Law of the Sea, to come up on the stage, please. His Excellency Sheikh Abdullah bin Ahmad Al Khalifa. He's currently the Undersecretary for International Affairs in the Ministry of Foreign Affairs and the Chairman of Derasat, Bahrain. He has been the Undersecretary for International Affairs in 2015 and the Director General for External Communications, International Information Affairs Authority in 2014. May I now request Mr. Yu Min Thu. Mr. Yu Min Thu is the Permanent Secretary in the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, Myanmar. He also serves as the ASEAN SOM leader of Myanmar at ASEAN-related meetings. Mr. Yi Xianling, he is the Director General in the Department of Boundary and Ocean Affairs under the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, China. His diplomatic career began in 1991 when he joined the Foreign Ministry, and since then he has been the Director of the Department of Treaty and Law, a counselor, and the Director of the External Office of the Climate Change Affairs. He's also worked twice in the Chinese Embassy to the Netherlands. And our final speaker, last but not the least, Her Excellency Ms. Pornipol Kachanala. She's currently serving as advisor to the Minister of Foreign Affairs, Thailand. She has previously served as advisor to Finance Minister and Deputy Prime Minister. She also served as the advisor to Minister of Industry and Deputy Minister of Commerce from 2004 to 2005. She's also been a columnist and executive director of Aegis Capital. We'll be requesting all the speakers to kindly confine themselves to 10 to 12 minutes. And without wasting much ado, I'll request His Lordship, Kriangsak Kitticheseri, to kindly come onto the stage.
Thank you very much. So it's a very tough position to be here after lunchtime when people still enjoy lunch. And also to speak about very technical issue of the law of the sea. So I'm specifically asked to talk about managing peace in the Indo-Pacific regions, the role of the International Tribunal for the Law of the Sea, or ITLOS. We also have a PowerPoint presentation to simplify things. So ITLOS, or the Law of the Sea Tribunal, was set up in the year 1996. We have 21 independent judges. We are not government officials. So my last posting was as ambassador of Thailand to Russian Federation. So after my election, I resigned to take up the position of the judge of ITLOS. And we are based in Hamburg. And we are accorded positions equal to the UN Under Secretary General. Of the 21 judges from ITLOS, 4 are from Indian Ocean countries: India, Thailand, South Africa, and Tanzania. The Tanzanian judge is interesting because Tanzania has occupied the position at ITLOS since the beginning. And the first Tanzanian judge to ITLOS was at the time of his election to ITLOS, the incumbent Prime Minister of Tanzania himself. So it means Tanzania accords very important role to ITLOS. But one country is missing, Kenya. It is a powerhouse in terms of law and order in the Indian Ocean, especially regarding piracy. Unfortunately, it has submitted candidates, but it has never succeeded for some reason. But I think Tanzania and Kenya should be invited to the next Indian Ocean Conference because they are there and they are very important to the rule of law in the ocean. Now, very complex dispute settlement mechanism is lost. Let me summarize it this way. If two parties agree to go to it-loss, they go to Hamburg with 21 judges sitting in the case. If one of them disagree the choice of it-loss, or one of them dispute the jurisdiction of it-loss, then they go to the so-called Annex 7 arbitration. Annex 7 arbitration normally comprises 3 or 4 judges from it-loss plus 1 outsider. An example for this is the Philippine case against China. It is not permanent court arbitration as generally understood. It is in fact Annex 7 arbitration under the Royal Sea Convention. But it's strange that it-loss say, if you don't come to us, don't use our facilities, go elsewhere. So that's why they use the facilities of permanent court arbitration in The Hague. So that's it. It is not permanent court arbitration, but the point is, I tell my colleague in it-loss, you must stop this because people get confused. Even the website of International Court of Justice and Permanent Court Arbitration say, don't ask us any question about the judgment in Philippine case because we are not the court, right? So this is something that's very strange. But again, there are quite a few interesting so-called Annex 7 arbitration. In the Indian Ocean, for example, the Charcos Island arbitration between Mauritius and UK is one. Another one which is still pending, with several of my colleagues got involved, the case between Ukraine and Russian Federation regarding Crimean Sea. This is some example. So if the two parties agree, go to it-loss. If not, then Annex 7 arbitration. The next one. Back. So the next thing to consider is that it is compulsory under the 1982 Royal Sea Convention for parties to settle dispute in the case of navigation. Freedom navigation, right of innocent passage, is a must to go to the Royal Sea Convention dispute settlement. Another one is overflight over the sea. So aircraft, airlines flying over the ocean, if you have dispute over that, is under jurisdiction of the Royal Sea Convention's court and tribunal. The next one, laying of submarine cables and pipelines. This is also compulsory to go to dispute settlement. And the other ones, others, unless otherwise agreed. So it's not compulsory to go to dispute settlement in 2 cases. Marine scientific research in the exclusive economic zone and fishery disputes in the exclusive economic zone. They will go to the so-called compulsory conciliation process. I'll tell you more about that. The next one, the so-called opt-out choices. States parties may opt out of dispute settlement in 3 cases. First one, sea boundaries. Second one, military activities at sea. The third one, law enforcement at sea. But in the case of sea boundaries limitation, if the party opt out not to use dispute settlement, it must accept compulsory conciliation. What the conciliation process means is that the parties appear before conciliators, 5 or 6, right? They argue cases as if they appear before a tribunal, but the proceedings are secret. Reports are not binding. But I cite one example how effective this is. The case between Timor-Leste and Australia. Regarding the Timor Gap, they went even to the International Court of Justice without any solution. So they used this one conciliation. We have the Foreign Minister of Australia, Foreign Minister of Timor-Leste appearing to plead their cases before Conciliation Commission. And they also supported by their respective lawyers. It is interesting that in March of this year, the two countries signed an agreement, the new maritime boundaries between Australia and Timor-Leste in the Timor Sea. And this is a result of conciliation procedure. Next. To date, we have 25 cases before it lost since the year 1996, and numerous annexed 7 arbitrations and conciliations. Of special interest to the Indian Ocean is the case between Bangladesh and Myanmar maritime boundary delimitation in the Bay of Bengal. It is history-making in the sense that, first of all, the first time in history of international law, any court of tribunal delimited an area beyond 200 miles. Let me explain this way. You have exclusive economic zone, which is water surface, extending not beyond 200 miles. You have seabed, the so-called continental shelf, extending not beyond 200 miles, unless there is some kind of natural prolongation that gives the coastal state concerned continental margin beyond 200 miles. In this case, the tribunal said yes, Bangladesh has that margin. That's the first time in history it is being followed by International Court of Justice in another case, Colombia versus Nicaragua. But another thing is that the first time in history we have here water columns belonging to Myanmar, seabed belonging to Bangladesh. So in the same zone, the so-called gray area. So you can't have two regimes. This one has been followed in Annex 7 arbitration between India and Bangladesh. So this is new development, but one of the most interesting things is that the average time spent by ITLOS dealing with this case was 2 years. The average time spending by the International Court of Justice dealing with similar case, 6 years. So just think about that. The next one. And okay, India is also very active again. This one, it lost. Order Italy, India, stop attacking each other in the sense that to suspend all court proceedings and to refrain from initiating new ones that may worsen the situation. And this is some kind of what you call confidence building measure and restraint of hostile activities of the two countries. The next one. Yes, environmental dispute between Malaysia and Singapore. We settled that by order the two countries to set up a group of independent experts to settle the dispute. And they succeeded a few years later on in a friendly manner. Next one. Fishery disputes. We have a case where New Zealand, Australia sued Japan for violations of the rights of parties in the case of southern bluefin fisheries. Here, the tribunal also gave a very interesting direction on interpretation of fishery conservation, the obligation to use prudence and caution, as well as the recognition of fishery resources as part of the marine environment. So every time now international law talk about protection of marine environment, fishery have to be protected as well. The next one, IUU fishing. This is historic case. More than 30 countries appear before tribunal at that time. I myself appear on behalf of Thailand, the EU also appeared. The case involved sub-regional fishery commissions comprising 7 West African countries, asking the tribunal to explain the meaning of IUU fishing. Asking tribunal to explain what's the duty of flag state, the duty obligations of coastal states regarding fishing states, as well as regarding another coastal state that have the so-called shared fishery resources. This is historic in the sense that it is the first time that the tribunal has given an advisory opinion, and it also set another very, very important precedent, because now there is a movement among small island developing states to have clarifications regarding the effects of global warming, climate change, and sea level rise that may submerge islands under the sea. I cannot tell you more about this, but there is movement somewhere to seek possibility of asking advisory opinion from ITLOS on what to do, how to do something positive to prevent the very drastic situation where nation states somewhere in the Middle Ocean may disappear. Here we have 3 competing legal principles. The first one, statehood. To be a state, you must have quotation mark, defined territory, permanent population, government, and capability to enter into international relations. But if you don't have territory, what will happen? Because under customary international law, the sea, we have the so-called principle of the land dominate the sea. Before you can have maritime zones, you must have land territory. If you don't have a land, no maritime zone. But there is another theory, the so-called acquired rights. Unlike Atlantis in movies, we have people who are still there, who just don't disappear with the land. What to do about them? How would you reconcile these 3 competing principles? And this is of particular interest to countries like Maldives and other small island states in the Indian Ocean. So, the next one. This is a blueprint for code of conduct. In September last year, ITLOS rendered judgment in a case between Ghana and Cote d'Ivoire. The principles explained by ITLOS in that case, we explained it twice in April 2015 and last year, September 2017. In the case of overlapping claim, what are the rights and interests of the state concerned? What do you mean by code of conduct? We have a long list here. For example, no new drilling in the disputed area. How to prevent the confidential information gained from exploration, exploitation of resources in disputed area from being used to the detriment of the other disputing party. We also have the so-called monitoring activities and requirements and the so-called concrete confidence building measure steps. And the so-called oil concessions and grants, what to do about them? What are the effects of these rights on the other states? I think I will stop there because my time is running up, but I just can tell you about 2 very interesting developments that Indian Ocean have to take into account. The first one is that early next month, for the next 2 or 3 years, the UN will be negotiating an agreement on marine biodiversity beyond the limits of national jurisdiction, the so-called BBNJ. One example where it will somehow affect Indian Ocean, fish. Now we have the so-called freedom of the high seas. so anyone can fish in the high sea. But in the future, fish may be split into two. Fish as commodity, fish as generic resources. And in the latter case, the group of 77 and China argue that benefits from fish as generic resource should belong to common heritage of mankind to be shared by all. It has been disputed by USA, China, UK, and other countries. So you see, in the future, when you catch fish, you have to be careful whether it falls into one of the two regimes. And another very, I would say, sensitive political case that may come up in the future, Palestine. Palestine became party to the 1982 Lord Sea Convention in the year 2015. Last year, it almost declared maritime zones in order to grant oil and gas concessions. It postponed for fear that it will worsen the situation in the Middle East. But interestingly, the lawyer that drafted the proclamation for Palestine was the lawyer for Philippines in the China-Philippine case. And if Palestine proceeded to declare the zone will overlap with those of Israel, Lebanon, Egypt. But Israel is not party to 1982 Lord Sea Convention, so its laws cannot be used to settle dispute. But Palestine is not a UN member state, so the case cannot go to the International Court of Justice. It could happen that the Lord Sea Tribunal would be asked to rule on this case, but trying to avoid any adverse effect on Israel. But then there is another issue, recognition of Palestine as a state. Under UNCLOS, yes, but under international law in general, is it already a state? I think we need to wait until that case comes. Finally, thank you so much, and I must warn you something, because we judges have problem with questions. Judges just don't answer questions. Yeah. Why? If you want answer from judge, you bring case to the court and you give a judgment. Thank you.
Thank you, Your Lordship. I think there is no doubt that laws can play a major role. The way ITLAWs helped India, Bangladesh, and Myanmar resolve a very contentious maritime boundary dispute in Bay of Bengal could as well be a role model for many other countries in the world. Our next speaker is His Excellency Sheikh Abdullah bin Ahmad Al Khalifa. I'll request him to kindly come to the stage.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, very good afternoon. I'm very glad to be in Vietnam. Indeed, I have mixed feelings towards Vietnam, having spent just above a week exploring Vietnam from Da Nang, Hoi An, Halong Bay, and now Hanoi. My wife and I have already fell in love with this beautiful country and its people. On the other hand, I'm a bit upset because before the Vietnamese football team beat Syria yesterday, they beat my national team, Bahrain, 5 days ago. Nevertheless, in the spirit of good sportsmanship, I'm privileged to stand before you today and to be invited to speak at the Indian Ocean Conference. I thank and express my appreciation to the Indian Foundation for organizing and sponsoring this prestigious intellectual platform to meet and share diverse ideas and creative visions for ensuring world peace and prosperity. The history and geography of this important region of the world have always been connected to the Arabian Gulf region, making these two regions a center for trade and commerce, cultural relations, and the pursuit of knowledge. The links that binds us also give us the ability to respond to the threats of extremism and terrorism, as well as to the development issues, climate change, and other challenges that our two regions face collectively. In my remarks, I will focus on our vision for building a new regional structure in the Gulf region, considering that the Gulf is one of the most important areas of the international security order, as it represents a strategic source of energy within the wider regional picture. The Middle East has, since 2011, been a theater of military operations, civil wars, a center for exporting terrorism, exporting refugees, and a source for spreading sectarianism and religious violence. The region has, in just a few years, seen upheavals and instability that was worse than any other part of the world has witnessed, with serious implications for the collective security of the region. During the so-called Arab Spring, the Middle East region went through an unprecedented phase of spiraling chaos, and the state's institutions' collapse in a number of countries have paved the way for foreign powers to interfere in their internal affairs. For the first time since gaining independence, certain Arab countries have faced serious threats by sectarian groups and terrorist organizations that undermined their existence as states. The United Nations estimates of the losses caused by protests and unrests in several countries in the Middle East are about $614 billion during the period of 2011 to 2015. According to official Arab estimates, losses reached $900 billion at the beginning of this year, in addition to 1.4 million people dead and 15 million refugees. At the same time, the information and communication technologies revolution and changes in the structure of the world order have brought to the scene new security dimensions that reflect the changing interests of the major powers and their sphere of influence. The threat of terrorism comes also as a serious challenge with the rise of terrorist groups, organizations, and militias, and the spread of the ideologies of extremism and religious violence. On the other hand, the region also faces economic and social challenges that are no less important than fighting terrorism, such as the fall in the price of oil, creation of job opportunities for young people, and the need to continue providing investment incentives. Despite all these challenges, the picture is not bleak. Moderate Gulf states have achieved major successes, most notably the establishment of the Islamic Military Counterterrorism Coalition led by Saudi Arabia. The primary objective of the coalition, which has about 40 member states, is to protect Muslim countries from all the terrorist groups and organizations and preserve the security and stability of the region. Also, Iran's blatant interference in the internal affairs of Arab states has also been checked. And internal problems started to surface in Iran as a result of deteriorating economic conditions. The indications are that radical changes taking place may lead to the emergence of a new Iran. Also, the hostile practices of Qatar have been curtailed as a result of the boycott which was imposed by the Arab Quartet, Saudi Arabia, Emirates, Egypt, and Bahrain, in accordance with international law, within the context of restoring the balance in the region. Dear friends, the victory of the international coalition over the so-called Islamic states in Iraq and Syria and the vast territories it has lost does not mean that the end of terrorism is in sight. There are still many obstacles to achieving sustainable security. The extreme theocratic ideology is still alive and expresses itself in violent acts whenever it has a chance. There is a need to fight the ideologies of radical groups and eliminate the causes that lead to the adoption of extremist ideology and the recruitment of young people in the name of religion. We should also expect that terrorists can and are capable of planning for a new generation of unconventional capabilities, goals, strategies, and tactics. Terrorist groups cannot be limited to ISIS and Al-Qaeda, but should also include the groups supported by Iran, including the Houthis in Yemen, Hezbollah in Lebanon, and terrorist groups and cells in Gulf states. They are terrorist militias with intolerant sectarian ideology. Efforts should be made as part of global partnerships to counter cyber terrorism. Cut off the financial lifeline that allows terrorist groups to expand and punish states that sponsor terrorism. Therefore, we see the reimposition of US economic sanctions on Iran and the 12 demands set by the US for concluding a new deal is the right way to go forward. Because the current nuclear agreement provides opportunities for the Iranian regime to suppress its people, destabilize the security of its neighbors, and continue to develop its ballistic missile systems. The question here, did Iran change its behavior after the deal? And the answer is, of course it did, but to the worse. Ladies and gentlemen, to deal with the dramatic changes in the structure of the regional order and the increased threats to the security of the Gulf region, there is a number of successful international practices that can be used to build a stable security structure in the region, as was the case with the continents of Asia and Europe. Of late, there were certain ideas for the establishment of such regional security arrangements, but these were designed to serve the interests of those countries proposing them, and not the interests of all parties involved. These proposals disregarded the balance in the region and the requirements of cooperation and partnership. They lack the mechanisms capable of dealing with the existing crises or provide realistic solutions to prevent the escalation. The establishment of a comprehensive and sustainable regional order acceptable to all parties requires the building of trust and confidence that Iran sees all hostile behaviors and ends its interferences in the region's affairs based on the principles of security for all and become a normal peace-loving state. The same applies to Qatar. I don't want to appear pessimistic, but I believe that the Tehran and Doha regimes need to undergo a radical rehabilitation process so that they can be included in any acceptable regional arrangements. Iran must rid itself of racism, support of terrorism, and the mafia practices. Its neighbors have for decades suffered from its hostile behavior. Qatar is under a regime that lacks maturity, and we cannot allow a child play with a bomb among people just because he affords the price of one. Such an order also requires the acceptance of diversity, of coexistence and tolerance, and the agreement to settle differences through dialogue, as well as the creation of formulas for mutual economic cooperation. In this context, the Kingdom of Bahrain looks forward to building a balanced and effective regional security framework that combines security and development, based on the principles of reform, good governance, fighting all forms of extremism and terrorism, non-interference in the affairs of other countries, and strengthening of strategic partnerships. The Kingdom of Bahrain, under the leadership of His Majesty King Hamad bin Isa Al Khalifa, has laid out a clear vision for Gulf security, based on a continuous and self-sustainable reform process. Security and development as a necessary need for prosperity and combating terrorism. Bahrain's vision emphasizes the role of the GCC, the Gulf Cooperation Council, as a regional organization that promotes peace and stability and seeks solutions and political initiatives for the region's crises. The Kingdom of Bahrain presents the partnership of moderation as a means for establishing an effective, self-sustainable region order that is based on reason and harmony and can provide genuine security guarantees and safeguard the interests of all countries and preserve peace and stability in the region. Dear friends, our battle is an essential part of an all-out war against terrorism, poverty, and ignorance. This war must cover all kinds of terrorist activities, such as the organizing, funding, arming, and media support to terrorist groups. On the other hand, conducive environments should be created to ensure the success of reforms and sustainable development. From this rostrum, I invite all of us to use this international forum as a starting point for widening and deepening our partnership through coming up with innovative mechanisms and new ideas to enrich our shared values, foremost among which are our noble human values. To conclude, I salute you, the Indian Foundation and its partners, for your wonderful work and look forward to your constructive discussions and valuable recommendation. I thank you for your attention.
Thank you very much. I'll now request His Excellency Mr. Yu Min Thu, Permanent Secretary, Ministry of Foreign Affairs, Myanmar, to present his views. I'll request you to kindly restrict yourselves to 12 minutes.
Excellencies, dear panelists, distinguished participants, a very good afternoon. It is a great honor and privilege for me to participate in this third Indian Ocean Conference currently held in Hanoi. At the outset, I wish to join my dear colleagues in expressing our personal thanks and appreciations to the Indian Foundation, Diplomatic Academy of Vietnam, and other co-organizers for convening this very important conference here. I also wish to express my heartfelt thanks to the people and the government of Vietnam for hosting this important conference. We see merits in this conference, which provides a venue to deepen our better understanding on the economic and strategic importance of the Indian Ocean, and also its role in building the regional architecture. Such regional architecture should be open and inclusive and ally with the rule-based world order, an architecture which is built on shared values and principles. Excellencies, Indian Ocean is the world's third largest body of water and a vital route for global trade, energy, and investment. Over the years, we have seen traditional and non-traditional security challenges in the Indian Ocean, including the impacts of climate change, natural disasters, and maritime threats. Transnational crimes in the Indian Ocean, particularly drugs and human trafficking, have now become a serious regional problem. Piracy and armed robbery at sea are also becoming more widespread. IUU fishing also has considerable implications towards security and sustainability of the Indian Ocean. We should therefore give a strong and decisive message of our commitment in tackling malicious non-state actors in the region, especially the increasing presence of piracy and terrorism in our region. We can do so with the collective responsibility and through the promotion of marine domain awareness. It is also imperative that we should have a comprehensive approach towards a secure, stable, and interconnected Indian Ocean, which is most pivotal to all Indian Ocean Rim states. We need to foster constructive dialogue and build mutual trust and respect, and thus promote stable and resilient order in the Indian Ocean. Excellencies, it is most timely that we are gathering here to share our perspective on the importance of regional architecture, focusing on Indian Ocean. Indian Ocean is also a vital artery of regional peace and stability. As rightly elaborated by Prime Minister Modi, Indian Ocean should offer saga, security and growth for all in our region. We are glad that our meeting yesterday focused on security and governance architecture, which are pivotal to maintenance of peace, stability, and prosperity in our region. We can also deliberate further on the challenges and opportunities that the Indian Ocean offers to us. We need to foster effective regional architecture through effective institutions and mechanisms. Countries which share the Indian Ocean also need to stand together through strengthening of ties and mutual trust. Last night, the Honorable Prime Minister of Sri Lanka shared his thought that Indian Ocean is the ocean for the future. And Indian Ocean should serve as the maritime superhighway for the benefit of our people in the region. Excellencies, allow me to share my personal views from the ASEAN perspective. Since over the years, we have been witnessing a fundamental role of ASEAN in the ASEAN-led mechanism in shaping the evolving regional architecture. Since 2013, we have substantive discussions on regional security architecture with our dialogue partners from the East Asia Summit. We have convened a number of workshops focusing on the new initiative and try to find ways and means in order to avoid overlapping among the existing mechanisms. Currently, we have before us a number of initiatives, including Belt and Road Initiative, Indo-Pacific, and the recent Free and Open Indo-Pacific strategies, which may have substantial impact on the leading role of ASEAN in the region. In recognizing a catalyst role of ASEAN to the regional peace and stability, much support be given to ASEAN's centrality and its leading role in considering an emerging regional architecture, which should be complementary and beneficial to all countries in the region. Please be sure that ASEAN, on her part, will maintain and strengthen her protective role in shaping the geostrategic landscape in the region. Excellencies, on a personal note, Myanmar lived together with peace and harmonies with the family of nations and strive for the aspirations and interests of the people from our region. As a country sharing Indian Ocean, Myanmar is endeavoring to join the Indian Ocean Rim Association, and we are honored to receive the support from member countries at the recent meeting in Durban, South Africa. We're grateful to all our friendly countries who render their support. We look forward to working closely with the IORA member states to promote sustainable growth and development within the Indian Ocean and strengthen ties with countries along the rim of the Indian Ocean. With her geographical location linking South Asia and Southeast Asia, we are very much optimistic that Myanmar will also play a strategic bridge to the Indian Ocean. In conclusion, we wish to reiterate our firm commitment to continue our fullest cooperation with the countries of the Indian Ocean. Last but not least, I wish to express once again our thanks and gratitude to the organizers for hosting this very important conference. Thank you so very much.
Thank you, sir, for sticking to the time limit. Our next speaker is His Excellency Yi Xianliang, Director General, Department of Boundary and Ocean Affairs, Ministry of Foreign Affairs, People's Republic of China.
Thank you so much. I was reminded several times the time is 12 minutes. So I try my best. Actually, this is quite serious for all of us to talk about serious topics. I would like to remind Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, go back to the World War II. After that, we saw the fast development in the transatlantic area. And in the past 40 years, the Asia Pacific get fast development. Right now, we talk about Asia-Indo or Indo-ASEAN. So this is a serious topic for us. This is the third time the India Foundation organized such important and constructive conferences. The topic should be focused on the architecture for governance, whatever, general, or regional, or special. So I would like to focus on the architecture. I think this is a general acknowledgement who human being. We always face politics, security, law, environmental, economic, and culture. So if we talk about the architecture for the Indian Ocean region or for our region, I do believe we have no any intention to exclude anyone because this planet is so small. So come back to the first, we talk about politics. We are human beings. building trust, mutual trust, is most important for us. So trust each other, this is the basis. Political trust is most important. So if we have checked with the past years, what we have done between our leaders, most of the energy and the time paid for mutual understanding and mutual trust each other. The second is inclusiveness. Political inclusiveness is most important. The third one is mutual respect. Whatever, the big, the small, the poor, the rich, we have the equal sovereignty under the UN Charter. So let's go back to 1950s, China, India, and Myanmar. We initiate the quite general principle for the UN system. Today, I do believe most of countries and people, we do not forget this one, but some ones, they forget that one. Let's go back to learn and study UN Charter again, where we talk about political level issues in this conference. And also, we support multilateralism. How about the unilateralism? There's so many cases in the past years happened. So this is the trend we face. We talk about IOR cooperation or IOR, the future of IOR. First, we should, based on the political comments. Second, we talk about security. Yes, Indian Ocean is, right now is peaceful. But in this region, I have a quite deep understanding of some speaks that there's still some war, conflicts. What happened for them? So lost their lives. There's so many refugees. They need help. So this is one issue. Another issue is piracy. We have to recap. At someone scale, I do believe they are governor for the individual governments. I used to be. Recap covered 38 countries. Most countries here are the members to the recap. India, China, Korea, Japan, Myanmar, Bangladesh, and so on, Sri Lanka. How about what is the exact situation for security issue and safety issue in the region? We need some analysis, one by one. And terrorism is another issue. According to the UN escort mission, some countries send their navy ships going to the Aden and also Somali waters. Until today, the Chinese government already sent 29 escort teams, almost 12,000 persons. And we escort more than 5,000 commercial boats and vessels from China and or any other country. So this is actually the cooperation result in security and safety. And the third one might be economic. Economic is most important for us. I do believe we benefit from each other in the cooperation. Yesterday, someone have a question about the BRI. Here, I would like to say a little more about this one. Yesterday, President Xi Jinping hosted a meeting in China for the 5th anniversaries of the BRI. Right now, more than 100 countries and international organizations signed the agreement with China to cooperate in this or promoting this initiative. More than 140 countries, they already have some projects under the context of BRI. And more than 240,000 jobs created under this initiative. So this is totally economic one for connectivities. So I know India, ASEAN countries, some African countries, we all have our initiatives. So the position from China is quite clear. All these initiatives could be emerged. We support each other. And this one is open, transparent, and inclusiveness. I used to be the Chinese ambassador to Sri Lanka. It's quite clear any Chinese project in Sri Lanka should be in the way of joint venture, not only between China and Sri Lanka, but also we welcome anyone who have the intention to join us. So this is quite clear policy. Time by time, the Chinese ambassadors, ministers, even heads of government, heads of states, we talk with our friends abroad, time by time. But there's still some questions out of the facts. And also I note with surprise yesterday, some speaks I've seen the pre-conference did not talk the goal or the topic of the meeting. They totally spoke against China. So I would like to talk with him, and I gave him some book on history, on China, on the world, on other countries. I have 100 books on history, individual countries. So here, I would like to suggest to make this conference, this very good one, to be a constructive one, friendly one, not a confrontation one. So first, I would like to talk about the law. We have the judge from Italy here. Actually, I used to be a lawyer. There's so many law, international treaties. We just talk about the law of the sea. Except UNCLOS, there are more than 20,000 laws, treaties, conventions, agreements, arrangements, and code of conducts from IMO, from UNESCO, from UNEP, and also from regional organizations. Yes, of course, it's the Bible. UNCLOS is the Bible. But you check with the seamen, they don't know what means UNCLOS. They just know the code of conduct from the IMO. It's quite clear. So some countries did not participate, not the party to UNCLOS. But there must be, except the code of conduct or rules or regulations from IMO. Why? Because if we talk about the law, we should have some more consideration about which ones is general, which ones it's implementable. For Indian Ocean, we also have several regional agreements, as I know. For example, for the fisheries, and for some bilateral agreements between India and Bangladesh and Sri Lanka. So I do believe we should check what we need. For China, I would like to say a little more about this one. If we talk about ITLOS or UNCLOS, many people will refer to two issues. One is about the case between Philippines and China. But actually, this is a unilateral one, not a bilateral one. Because UNCLOS is the law of the sea. If you check the case, if they check the word, they touch the issue about the land, the territorial issue. And the second, they did not take any agreements from the government because this is actually against the UNCLOS. Fortunately, we already checked this issue. Yes, thank you. And the second issue is about freedom of navigation and freedom of overflights. I just give you one data. The Chinese GDP, right now more than 80% relying on the trade. More than 40% we should pass from South China Sea to Indian Ocean. More than 5,000 commercial transoceanic vessels every year from China or to China. I think here, many countries are the biggest trade partner with China. So Indian Ocean, it actually is the lifeline for Chinese. So we strongly support Indian Ocean countries to safeguard the peace and have a constructive arrangements, scientific, legal management for the sea line. Last one, maybe the final one, is environmental issue. Because right now, people forget about climate change. Actually, climate change might be the biggest threat to the countries, whatever bigger or small. The big threat to us. So how to deal with that? The second is about biodiversity. We lost the biodiversity in the ocean, just like the others, Pacific, Atlantic. How to deal with that? Of course, the people will put more eyes on the pollution, because pollution we can see. But the loss of biodiversity, the general people don't know. The final one is about culture. I must say, from anywhere, particularly from a culture, China is one part of Indian Ocean. China might be, in some extent, China is one country of Indian Ocean. Because if we talk southwest China, we have more than 3,000 kilometers borderline with South Asia countries. From Kunming to the farthest city, I should say capital, Colombo, just 4 hours. But if we fly from Kunming to Beijing, we need almost 4.5. So according to the UN system, China is the East Asia country. But we talk with Kunming people, with Southwest Chinese people, they say, no, we belong to the South Asia. So let me say, again, this is quite serious topic, serious issue. I thank you very much the Indian Foundation, Vietnam government, and the city of Hanoi for your cooperation to host this important and constructive conference. So thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Now we really have to ponder if China is an Indian Ocean country. We actually have to start looking at it. And our final speaker is Her Excellency Ponipal Kanchana. What do you?
Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, I have one important statement to make, and that is, I shall be brief. In the last 2 days, every prepared word in my remark have been taken out of it, so I will only highlight a couple of points. First, I'd like to offer my commendation to the India Foundation for successfully giving traction to the India-Pacific notion. It doesn't really matter whether you can find the definition to the notion or not. Many things in life you can't fit in neatly into a box, but at least you have an idea. It has been said many times that the India-Pacific strategy is about openness, inclusiveness, and participation. People participate because there's a new adage, a modern adage, believed to be coined in Washington in the year 2000, that is, if you're not at the table, you could end up on the menu. So you are at the table, and the chance to be on the menu is pretty slim. Participation is about collectiveness, and in the modern days economy, that countries are driving towards the 5Gs or the Internet of Things, connectivity is a sine qua non, the essential part of modern days. And on that area, Thailand is doing her part in promoting connectivity in the region and in the global arrangement. We take part. We are a founding member of ASEAN, and next year we'll chair the ASEAN. Will be the chairman of ASEAN, as well as the coordinating country between ASEAN and India. And we also take part in many fora, such as BIMSTEC, ECMEC, CLMVT, APEC, ACD, and many, many forums. And these days, I could dream in acronyms. And through these fora and conferences, Thailand is doing her part in promoting peace and stability in the region. Throughout this conference, you heard a great deal about freedom of navigation, maritime navigation. But I would like to draw attention to one initiative which could have far-reaching ramification in the security and prosperity of the region, and that is the trilateral India, Myanmar, Thailand highway. Why? Because this highway starts from India, it goes through Myanmar, reach out to Thailand, and that leg is supposed to be completed next year. And then it goes to another city in Thailand, goes to Cambodia, and then ends in Vietnam. This is a highway. There's another highway that is being built from the Y in Myanmar to Kanchanaburi, and the Y is probably one of the most important seaport route in the world, and Japan is taking part in that. From Kanchanaburi, it links up to Cambodia and again in Vietnam. So if you have this highway and you have the railroad being built in parallel to the highway, at the end you have the longest and most important land bridge linking the Indian Ocean and the Pacific Ocean from New Delhi to Da Nang. In connection with building the infrastructure connectivity, it's important we pool our resources together. Otherwise, if we don't, no one has enough resources to do it all alone. And every initiative will end up where it starts, in the drawing board. India has one of the most successful infrastructure funds in the world. It funds many, many infrastructure projects without having those expenses on the balance sheet of the country. We can learn from that, and if we can create a network of a similar financing facility in the region, this connective infrastructure connectiveness can happen. Otherwise, the chances are very slim. And I agree with Secretary Wells this morning that the government alone cannot undertake all these projects. The private sector has to participate. And how it's done, probably like one of the speakers said, that the private sector is probably faster than diplomats in making it happen. As Thailand is assuming the chairmanship of ASEAN in 2019, we do it with full recognition that ASEAN centrality is key to any successful attempt in creating seamless connectivity in the region. After all, at the end of the day, in promoting connectivity as a conflict resolution, where everybody benefits, it's not certain and not necessarily somebody else's loss. And it's not about dividing up equally the region or the piece of pie, but it's about creating a whole that is larger than the sum of its part. And that is what I would call a win-win strategy. There's a story that illustrates very well the best, I think is the best, what is a winning strategy is. And it shared with me by a friend, a very dear friend in Oman. When he was a young boy, he was a soccer player. He went to practice at the end of school day, and at the end of the practice, he came home being so thirsty. He remembered that in the morning he put 2 oranges in the refrigerator. So he went to the fridge right away, tried to grab the 2 oranges, only to find out that they're gone. He asked his mother where the oranges were, and his mother said, "Oh, your sister took them." The boy he protested that, "No, but they're mine. I told you this morning they're mine. I want to come back and have them. Would you please at least tell my sister to give 1 to me? She can keep 1. I will have 1." He thought that was a win-win strategy. But his mother said, "No, you go to your sister and tell her yourself." So he went, and he says to his sister, "You can have 1 orange, and I can have another 1." His sister looked at him and she said, "Brother, I don't really need 2 oranges. All I needed was to make marmalade. So if you let me peel the oranges, I keep the orange peels, make my marmalade, and you can keep the 2 oranges to yourself." And that is, ladies and gentlemen, a winning strategy. Thank you, and the applause goes to my Omani friend. And in the end, ladies and gentlemen, peace and prosperity go hand in hand. If the fruit of prosperity is not shared, peace cannot be achieved. And if peace is not achieved, prosperity is not sustainable. The zero-sum game leads to that. And I think that conundrum weighs heavily on everybody's mind. I don't need to address it, but we don't have to come up to get to the dead end, because at that point, if one insists on winning everything, a zero-sum game, and it leads to conflict. Ironically, conflict and war is never a zero-sum game. It's non-zero-sum game. At that point, there's no winners, only losers. Thank you.
Thank you. I think you need to log on to slido.com, as been intimated to you earlier, for questions. And while you make your mind regarding questions, there is one important administrative announcement. Those of you who have volunteered to go to Da Nang tomorrow, the flight departs from the airport at 6:30 a.m. So we'll be leaving the hotel at 4:30 a.m. for airport. So kindly be at the lobby by 4:30 a.m. We'll be returning from Da Nang at 8:55 p.m. We'll take the flight from Da Nang at 8:55 p.m. and we'll be coming to Hanoi accordingly. So this is just for information. While we've already got one question. Sonu Trivedi. Closer. Louder slightly. You're not.
Hello. Yeah. My question is to His Excellency U Min Thu. His Excellency, I hope you would agree that foreign policy is an extension of the domestic policy, and herein, I would like your response on the continued internal conflict in Myanmar, especially the Rakhine State, and don't you think it will affect the border stability and Myanmar's relation with the neighboring state? And the second question, which is about the China-Myanmar economic corridor, what do you have to say about it, if you can let us learn more on it? Since Myanmar has accepted to join this ambitious BRI project of China. Thank you.
Hello. Thank you for the question. For the very first question about the Rakhine, we've been doing with Bangladesh as a bilateral initiative. So this morning, I think you may recall that the Minister of Planning from Bangladesh raised some issues, and he's been called upon the member states here in this conference to encourage our government to receive the displaced person. As a matter of fact, we are ready since January 23rd. And so far, we haven't received anyone coming from Bangladesh. But anyway, we will continue to work with Bangladesh as a bilateral collaboration, and we will continue to work with the international community to resolve this issue. So sadly, Kofi Annan deceased a few days back. So anyway, we will continue to implement the recommendations by the Kofi Annan report. Secondly, I personally accompany the Bangladesh foreign minister who visited Myanmar a few days back. So I brought him to northern Rakhine and see by his own eyes the readiness of our preparations. We even brought him to some villages where he could see the harmonious environment between the people from different communities and different faiths. And second question, Myanmar-China economic corridor. So that is part of the OBOR. But we are still we are still studying the overarching OBOR. But we have initial agreement on the Myanmar-China economic corridor, which we believe will contribute to the development of our country as well as the relations with our neighboring country, China. I thank you.
One more question. General Syed Atta Hasnan.
My question is to Mr. Xian Liang from China. Thank you very much for your very fascinating expose on the justification of China's presence in the Indian Ocean. But my question to you essentially is, why does China justify its presence in the Indian Ocean as a matter of right? You do not have land boundaries. You do not have maritime boundaries with the Indian Ocean. Yes, you have strategic interests and you have commercial interests. In both these cases, don't you think it is better for China to justify its presence there through partnerships and through trust, rather than as a matter of right?
Thank you very much for your question. Actually, I know this might be a question for you, perhaps also for some others. Actually, I talk about 6 elements about the architecture for this IOR cooperation. So the last one, I talk about the culture. So I say, in some extent, China is one part of Indian Ocean, or even an Indian Ocean country. So if we go back to more than 2,500 years ago, China and India, we actually influence in China in culture. And also some other countries, Sri Lanka and others. 600 years ago, Zheng He 7 times sailed into Indian Ocean. As most of their activities are culture. Of course, they have trade. So how about the civilizations? In this region, I think we have the most civilizations, just like we have the most populations in the world. So I have no any strategic consideration about what I say China is one part of the Indian Ocean or China is the Indian Ocean country. But thousands of years, China used the waterline at what just India use and other country use. And also the southwest parts, the people in the southwest parts of China, their culture, and right now the economic, mostly get the impacts and also support each other from South Asia. So this is just a cultural concept. We have no any intention to go there to do something against any other one. Indian Ocean must be a peaceful one and open to all countries in the world. So this is the idea. Thank you.
Any more questions? We could take up to 2 more questions. General Brajesh Kumar India.
I have a comment and a question. The comment is on the connectivity from India to Vietnam. It's a very music to our ears. If it happens next year, it will be a great thing. And all countries, Myanmar or Thailand, Vietnam, they deserve kudos for this. My question is to His Excellency Yi Qian Ling. The question has been asked in a different form. I'll elicit a response from you. Your talk started with trust and inclusiveness. It was music to everybody's ears. In fact, I tweeted immediately. But at the end of the talk, when you extended the logic of your right through cultural means, historical means in Indian Ocean region, that I thought was a paradox. Because you have manifested historically in recent years in South China Sea in a very, very violent manner, if I may say so, and diplomacy provides for it, if provides for it. So reactions, your reactions, sir, on this paradox, while you wish to be inclusive, while you wish to build mutual trust, but the actions and deeds appear to be different, this must get smooth. Otherwise, the elephant in the room, dear sir, thank you.
Thank you. I think you raised several questions. I tried to divide it into 2 parts. First, because you take the example of South China Sea. Let me first check about South China Sea. South China Sea, actually there are 3 or 4 kinds of issues. First is about land disputes or territorial disputes about the islands. The second is about the delimitation. So these issues, we have the joint statement with with Vietnam, with Philippines, with Malaysia, it's quite clear. We will resolve all disputes by negotiation and consultation. So this is quite clear. Perhaps you know, sir, China has 14 boundary neighbors. We already resolved our delimitation with 12 through negotiations. Additional to India and Bhutan. You know the reason. But we try our best. China and India, we try our best because I'm the exact person to deal with this issue. So in South China Sea, the same. The third issue is about the resources, fishing resources, and oil, gas and oil. 23 years ago, China announced unilaterally, stop fish from, I think, May 1 to August 1. We try our best to conserve the resources. Last week I talked with Philippines, and also might be tomorrow I talk with our Vietnam friends to deal with this issue, how to make joint efforts to protect the resources. The fourth one is about the navigation. It's what I said. In South China Sea, perhaps every year more than 20,000 vessels from China, from Japan, Korea, and other countries, India, Europe, US, Australia, Asian countries. No ending case about the violation of freedom of navigation. And also no ending case about the regular overflight. But you know what happened? Some forces from outside, they make some trouble for the coastal states, not only China, but also some others. So this is the situation, but I try out consultation and talks with everyone in the region and out of the region. So South China Sea is peaceful, but some people does not like that sea maintain peaceful. So this is the issue. Second question, come back to Indian Ocean. No any problem about navigation. The only problem is from piracy. We have recap. We already have the Navy ships from India, China, and some others. We are there. So inclusiveness means cooperation, means maintain peace, stability, security, means we develop our countries, China, India, and all others, and also promote our culture exchange. So this means inclusiveness. We did not say what kind, perhaps in the future, there might be an organization just like ASEAN or SAARC. SAARC right now China is observer. And also like Shanghai organizations. It's inclusive. India is a new party. So inclusiveness is a good one, not a challenge for India or for any other coastal states. I didn't say China is a coastal state of Indian Ocean. I just said from cultural view, exchange view, China is one part of Indian Ocean region. So this is the issue. Thank you.
Yeah, Hamsa Devyanani.
At the cost of inconveniencing your Lordship, Justice Kriang Sak, if I may be permitted to ask your Lordship a question. This is regarding UNCLOS. So UNCLOS, we all know, does not have a implementation mechanism. It's only obligatory in nature for member countries. So with regards to Indo-Pacific, is there something that we can come about with the regional architecture that compels member countries to follow it, and if not, something that implements it? Thank you.
Hello.
Yes.
You see, I'm also researching an issue of implementation of judgments of international court and human rights courts. European Court of Human Rights have thousands of cases which are not implemented, especially by a few powerful states. But the value judgments themselves give moral high grounds to the parties. In the case of the law of the sea, it lost, for example. In the case of, my apologies to my colleague from China, the South China Sea, the issue is it somehow explains the rules of the road in the oceans. So it somehow, in my honest opinions, lead to the willingness to conclude a code of conduct which has been pending for over decades. So somehow there's some kind of moral pressure, political pressure for the parties concerned to abide by the rule of law. So you said that, okay, there are so many issues about the law of the sea, not just South China Sea, but the South China Sea happened to be the most prominent issue in attention of the international community. So this is why a lot of people keep on coming back to that. I'm not saying that it's right or wrong, because I'll tell you one thing. Judges in that case ride a car with me to office every day, and one even share office with me. But we never discuss about legal issues. So we can only talk about law in deliberation room, but not socially. So my point is, in my opinions, it has proven that if Indian Ocean somehow have some kind of code of conduct, it could be something that at least give moral high grounds to the countries that wish to abide by the rule of law to somehow use this to justify its action and defend its actions. So I think this is the way that we proceed, because I think if we are not talking about rule of law, we are talking about policies. We are in maybe some kind of crazy jungle, with lawless society, something like that. So at least you look at the judgment in International Court of Justice. Many cases are not implemented. I prefer not to mention names of state. When the courts say no, the state concerned should not execute prisoners, but the state in question continue with executing the prisoners, nevertheless, because of some reasons. But the point is, the law is there. It has been proven to be the correct guideline. If we have, now we are starting on some kind of code of conduct for the Indian Ocean, I hope that we can build on the rule of law instead of some kind of policies dictated by a few powerful countries.
With that, we come to the end of this session. I'll request General Dhruv Katoch, Director, India Foundation, to kindly come onto the stage and present mementos to the speakers of this session. And while the mementos are being presented, information regarding tomorrow's trip, your individual air tickets will be emailed to you individually tonight. His Lordship, Kriangsa Kitty Chassery. His Excellency Sheikh Abdullah bin Ahmad Al Khalifa. His Excellency Yu Min Thu, His Excellency Yi Xian Liang, Her Excellency Pornpimol Kanchanala, thank you very much. Ladies and gentlemen, kindly give them a big hand. We'll request the speakers to take their chairs down below. We'll start the next session immediately, so kindly do not leave the hall. We'll be starting in about 5 to 10 minutes' time.